Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. Last weekend, he joined a bipartisan group of senators on a visit to Israel, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Isaac Herzog, and other members of the newly created Israeli war cabinet. Senator, thanks for being on with us. So I mentioned the political leaders you met with, but importantly, you met with families of Israeli hostages being held inside Gaza. More than 200 of them, we believe, there now. Can you share with us some of those conversations and what you learned from the trip?
Incredibly powerful. These were American Israelis whose family members were being held hostage. As you might guess, they're incredibly emotional and obviously one of the best for their family. They really are looking towards the United States. They're very disappointed with their political and military leadership for being caught so off guard. By the way, one of the political leaders said it is the responsibility of the state to keep Israelis safe, and they had failed. So there's a kind of acknowledgement of that. And they are looking to the United States, these family members of hostages. One said, "You're like our big brother. We need your protection right now." And there was nothing manipulative. They were just laying out their heart. Their family members are captive. One more thing, there were several so touching things, but one, she showed a video of the 12-year-old. The video had been taken by Hamass and posted online, just being led away. And he had this kind of smooth face of a 12-year-old, kind of, has never understood kind of how terrible things could happen. And the child was being led away. One more, I just can't help myself. She spoke about how her son, I believe it was, or her nephew, had his arm shot off. It had been witnessed. He was taken away by Hamas. She said, "It is unimaginable that the good news is that the boy has had his arm shot off and that he's being held captive in Gaza by Hamas. But the good news is that he is alive." It is something that most of us cannot imagine.
No, I can't imagine any of this. The horrors that the Israeli people experienced and the stories that you witnessed had to be so heartbreaking. Senator, I'm wondering, while you were there, did you and your delegation get any insight into how it could be that those Israeli citizens had to wait 4, 5, 6 hours for the military to come and rescue some of them? Any insight into this massive security failure that goes against everything I know that you and I and most Americans have ever believed about Israel's capability to protect their people?
There was a sense that Hamas was actually evolving into a governing body as opposed to a terrorist organization. The Israelis have put 2/3 of their forces on the northern border, fearing attack from Hezbollah more than an attack from Hamas. In fact, one of the men we spoke with, Benny Gantz, briefly the prime minister, had actually opened up to allow 19,000 Palestinians a day to come in and work in Israel, with the idea that they would return back to Gaza and help improve the economy. So this was a strategy to begin to open up the two economies and to allow, if you will, an unleashing of the potential of the Palestinian people. Unfortunately, the Hamas took that as an opportunity to prepare for war. One thing that's kind of a metaphor for this, there was a kibbutzim near the border, people who were committed to peace, the Israelis committed to peace. They were teaching their children both Arabic and Hebrew. The Hamas terrorists specifically targeted this kibbutzim. A metaphor, if you will. They were there not just to kill Jews, but also to kill the possibility of peace.
Well, and can you underline that fact? And it's such a horrible story, but can you underline the fact that that Hamas sees actually those who would try to understand the Palestinian people in Israel and try to forge alliances, they see them as the greatest threat? I mean, you look at their founding documents, they talk about their goals to murder Jews and to not make peace with Israel. Can you talk more about that, and also talk about what the United States policy should be regarding Israel's attempt to uproot Hamas?
Well, so first, as regards the first point, Hamas sees that as their mission, not the protection of the Palestinian people, and certainly not the Israelis. I say that because it was pointed out that the Israelis were dropping leaflets asking Palestinians to evacuate Gaza City because they knew they were going to destroy it or bomb it or whatever. And Hamas was trying to keep the Palestinians there, blockading roads. We saw pictures of these blockades not allowing the retreat, if you will, from Gaza City. As somebody pointed out, the Palestinians are trying to protect, I'm sorry, the Israelis were trying to protect the Palestinians. The Hamas was trying to use the Palestinians to protect themselves. There's a difference between Hamas and the Palestinians. As regards U.S. policy, we need to be with Israel, number one. We need to support them. We need to give them that which they need. But one thing that the Israelis emphasize, they want humanitarian aid to go to the Palestinians. They are differentiating between Hamas and the Palestinians. There will be Palestinians and civilians that die. That is a tragedy. But it is in large measure because Hamas has invited this upon Gaza, and they are using Palestinians as human shields. But the Israelis were specifically asking from the military and the political leadership for humanitarian aid. The United States should do what it can to not just arrange for it to be delivered, as we have done, but to make sure that it gets in. Now, this is complicated because you need the Egyptians, the Israelis, and Hamas to agree to this. But hopefully all will agree to get the aid in to the Palestinian people.
So, Senator, President Biden is going to address the nation tonight, talking to Americans about the need to support Israel, but more than Israel, also Ukraine as well. And White House aides suggested they're going to put together a funding request, could be up to $100 billion for those two nations, as well as Taiwan and border security. So let's get your assessment here. Is that an appropriate figure to ask for? And do you think it could pass through the Congress?
Well, I think it can pass through the Senate. As an appropriate level, you want to see what it's going to break down to. We're told that $60 billion is what the Ukrainians need, as opposed to just giving the Ukrainians a little here and a little there and a little there. That $60 billion is what they would need for some time to come, so there'll be no more ask of Congress. Certainly the border, the southern border with Mexico, we need help there. Not just money, but policy to try and keep this influx from being so crazy. As regards passing, I think it'll pass. It'll pass the Senate. Now, obviously, the House doesn't have a speaker, but I think that the package together would pass. But again, I can't really predict what's going to happen in the House right now.
None of us can, Senator. None of us can.
Well, speaking of the House,
well,
why don't we just ask?
I'm curious. I know it's really not your business. I am wondering, though, whether you would like to see somebody like Representative McHenry take over the speakership, at least temporarily, through the end of the year, so you all could get business done.
I think Patrick would be a great temporary speaker. I'm not sure he wants it. Who would? I think he's respected by all sides. That's probably why McCarthy selected him in the first place. And things have to get done. We've just talked about these things, but the border is part of this. We've got to address the fact that I think 7 million people have come across our southern border illegally since President Biden took office. Among those are now people who are on our terrorist watch list. This has to be addressed. So I think Patrick has that respect and the ability to work with all sides. And the fact that he doesn't want it probably would recommend him to those who, okay, he's temporary, but we can fight it out later.
Yeah. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, thank you very much for coming on Morning Joe this morning. Thank you.
Thank you all.